You are tuned in into AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa, and you're watching AAU Talks. My name is Ajiman Ochodako. On this episode, I'll be talking to you about the program organized by the International Association of Student Affairs Services, the Global Summit, that brings together all leaders in higher education, particularly education institutions and student affairs, to talk about more on promoting sustainable change in institutions and also student affairs. And today I'll be talking to the Vice President of the IASAS in the person of Professor Dr. Birgit Schreiber to look more into some of these transformative actions to help enhance student affairs in institutions. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Welcome back on AAU Talks, and I have with me Professor Dr. Birgit Schreiber, and she is the Vice President of the International Association of Student Affairs and Services. Birgit, you're welcome to AAU Talks.
Thank you very much for having me. It's very exciting.
Great. It's going to be a historic and memorable moment come this May in Korea with the IASAS Global Summit. Well, before one can appreciate the legacy that has been set by the IASAS over time, we would like to know more about the IASAS and how your journey has been like. How has it been?
Thank you. It's wonderful that you're hosting this conversation and that you're making it possible for all Africans and all of us to hear about the summit. So the International Association of Student Affairs and Services, that's IASAS, I want to say not ISIS,
Sure.
is holding its 7th Global Summit. And we have been having global summits for it's now 14 years, because we migrate around the world every 2 years. So the Global Summit brings together thought leaders from higher education, of student affairs mainly, student support, student development, and all the related functions. So it's bringing together the thought leaders to deliberate on issues that concern all of us, that concern student success, institutional success, and how we can enable that. Let me tell you a little bit about the summits. The summits, we started in 2012 in Washington. Then we had 2014 in Rome. In 2016, we were in Cape Town in South Africa. And 2018 in Santiago in Chile. Then Toronto, Ireland, and now we are in Korea. So we migrate around the world, and it really is testimony and evidence of how global our association is. So we focus on different regions across the world. We have the global summits there. And the focus usually is on some issues that concern all of us. Some issues are unique to the continents that we live on and that we come from, but there is something universal and there's something generic that concerns all of us, and that is student success. How do we enable student success? And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute, but maybe just to emphasize that student success on the one hand is about the students themselves. How do we provide relevant support, impactful support to the students we have? But the second part is, how do we shape contexts that are conducive for student learning? So it's a two-prong approach. It's always about thinking about the individual, but thinking about the context within which the lived experience of our students takes place.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And, couching the purpose on how do you enhance student success, and also how do you promote development for these leaders who are able to create this change is amazing. And coming with this great purpose, we would like to know from the organizational point of view, what are your core mission and visions that actually power these targets?
So exactly. So the purpose of the Institute of IASAS is manifold, but the key thing is to promote student and institutional success. That's the one aspect.
Mm.
And then the second one is to promote a global community, to enable a global community for all of us. So that means we create platforms where people across continents, we've got 7 regions, where people across continents can form associations and lobby groups and organizations and professional development groups in those regions. But we also create a platform for that to happen across the globe. Maybe I could tell you a little bit about the regions that we have. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about the regions that we have. So we have about 1,750 members in the organization in 7 regions across the globe. And every region has a director. So we have a director for Africa, a director for South America, Asia, Oceania, Europe, North America, and so forth. So it's 7 regions. And these directors support the region and make sure we share information, we share programs, we share events, we invite people to these events, mentoring programs, staff exchange, and so forth in those regions. So that's very, very exciting.
And as very important scope, do you deal directly with institutions? So do you count institutions as your members, or you count the regions as a whole?
It can be all of that. So you as an individual, and Anjuman, I hope you will join us as an individual. And from that, you get benefits. You get information on mentoring programs, conferences, professional development programs, webinars, all kinds of things we do. And you would get that information as a member, and you benefit from that. But also your association. So we have associations, let's say the Southern African Federation of Student Affairs, that as an organization is a member. So you have different associations that might be in a country. We have that sort of member. And then we have the institutions themselves as members as well. So the universities or the technicons or the TVET colleges are members as well. So, you can choose any kind of membership.
And how does these institutions be members if they want to be members? How do they go about it?
Go to the website and you click on become a member. So that's an easy one. And I want to just add to that. So being involved in the IASAS is, on the one hand, you benefit, but we also want our members to be active and to contribute to the global conversation about students. Each region, and we often distinguish global north, global south. Each region needs to find its voice and needs to organize its own student affairs shape and size, because each region is different. So we put a lot of emphasis on making sure that your region develops its own student affairs voice, and not we import from the global north or whatever it might be. So we don't want to import models, but we want to make sure it's an empowerment avenue where people find their own voice around student success.
And as a very global institution, you may have standards. What are these standards that you check or you assess, or criteria that you measure up who can be a prospective member? Do you qualify?
There is an application process, but it's not too difficult. I mean, we haven't excluded anybody yet, so it seems there's a lot of great people wanting to apply. So that, becoming a member is fairly easy.
Sure. Another very important thing to consider with the IASAS is what has been some of your past initiatives that have driven transformation within institutions and also student affairs. What are some of the things you've done in the past?
That's a wonderful question. Important is that all our events, initiatives, and programs are driven by the regions. So all our members are able to drive any initiative they would want to have. So we encourage and facilitate and create the platform for webinars. We have regular webinars that address, for instance, we recently had one on sustainable climate change in higher education institutions. And it was a webinar with a bunch of staff that worry about climate change. And then during Corona, which is not too long ago, although it feels long ago, during Corona, we had We had webinars for just students on how students cope with Corona and what are some of the ways of how we can help students cope with the shutting of the institutions. And then we had a series of webinars for staff to help staff offer support and development for students while the institutions were closed. So we did a lot of work with staff, equipping staff and enabling staff and supporting staff to support their students during Corona. So one of the series of events, a series of programs that we offer is webinars, which are great. The second one is that we hold annual association meetings. We hold meetings where all the heads of the associations can meet and share and discuss issues that they may have.
Okay.
We have one or two a year, depends. This year we had two already, or last year already, we had two already, where about 34 student affairs association heads, so it's the president of the associations, come together and discuss what it is that they're needing. We did a broad needs assessment to see what it is that our members require and how we can better support them. And one of the things that came out was that we are starting a professionalization program, which is a continuous professional development program for student affairs practitioners. So that is helping staff develop competencies, develop leadership skills, develop fluid leadership styles that are required, to know our students, to know the diverse range of students we need to support, and to help us recognize factors in our context that are barriers to student success. So we do needs assessment. What else? Oh, yes, of course. We do the Student Leaders Global Summit, which is happening on an annual basis. So the student leaders are usually the SRCs or student union presidents, and they apply and they are selected to join once a year. We had last year's Student Leader Global Summit was in Rome in July, and now in July, and I'm looking at the date, I think it's 19 to 21 July, it's in Pretoria, South Africa.
Right.
So Pretoria University is hosting the Student Leader Global Summit, and they will host over 40 selected student leaders who come together to deliberate on how the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, how these can be promoted in our institutions and how to lead sustainable change in their contexts. So that's a great event that happens annually. And then we said the Global Summit, of course, happens every second year. And let me see, we have a mentoring program for staff to help staff advance their careers in the international space, to advance their leadership abilities, to advance their competencies that are relevant for student affairs.
Absolutely. And there's more you can hear from Birgit when it comes to the IASAS making an impact with their legacy projects and a whole lot more. Stay with us. We'll be right back to this break. Welcome back on AAU Talks, the voice of higher education in Africa. My name is Ajiman Ochrodako, and I'm in a conversation with Birgit. We're looking at IASAS as a global institution for higher education institutions across the continent and also student affairs. And there's a whole lot that IASAS is doing that is amazing. I kept nodding, and I believe you are nodding also at home and seeing how they make an impact. I mean, you mentioned that the Global Summit is like the icing on the cake, but there are some other impactful things right in the basket. Now we want to see, how do you deal with your partners or institutions that are with IASAS? Do you have a more direct interaction with them right from your level, or you do more of a collective one?
It's a both approach. It's lovely you asked that question. So on the one hand, we have, it's a collective, it's a general, and we share information, we promote development and so forth, and create a platform. But we also work directly with some institutions. So just recently we did a research, and we do a lot of research with our members to see what is happening in student affairs across the globe. And we recently did some research on how the student affairs models and structures in the institutions have changed since COVID. And COVID forced all of us to move our support and development into online media. So we needed to use online avenues to support our students. And the question was, how has that fundamentally changed, or has it changed the way we support our students? And indeed it has, and it has very powerfully. What we found is that our institutions, instead of just focusing directly on the student, they've developed a broader lens. So student affairs focuses on the student and has always done that in terms of its academic performance, or students' academic performance and personal social functioning. But since Corona, the student affairs divisions have become broader to also think much more clearly and more deliberately about the context and what kind of context our students live and study in order to be successful. And student affairs has become bolder about advocating for the context. We need a decent connectivity, we need decent residences, we need decent and secure food for our students. We need safe and safe homes and communities for our students to be successful. And Student Affairs has broadened that lens and is lobbying more broadly around that.
You know, one other perspective that I also want to draw attention to is the invasion of AI and its creative power. Today, students are actually having that dilemma, that are we using our brain, or are we actually relying on AI to support us in bringing out the best that we have in our minds? IASAS, what is your stance on this issue, and how are you promoting the education on how we can apply AI responsibly and do things right?
That's a wonderful question, and it's spot on, as if you knew that we just launched a research project. The questionnaire went live on Monday. What is today? Friday. It went live on Monday with a broad questionnaire on how student affairs and services across the globe is using AI. And I think it's not so much a question of either or, are we using our brains or the AI brain? It's a combination. How can we become more impactful using AI to our advantage? So the question is, how do we leverage AI to do the things that we need to do, and to do them better? One aspect is, for instance, that we can identify vulnerable students earlier with AI. So for instance, we can scan how often students are on campus, how often they're in classes, how their marks are doing. And when we put that information together, when we put that analytics together, we get a good picture of what the vulnerable groups are and the vulnerable students. And then we even use AI to reach out to them, to make automated messages to trigger that they make contact with us. And you know, one of the key things for our students, for our student success, is that students need to feel connected to the institution. They need to feel they belong. They need to feel they have a voice and they can participate in what goes on in the institution. And AI can be very useful in triggering responses, in pulling students back in and bringing students back into the institution, so that we can engage and work with our students in meaningful ways.
That's
so the
amazing.
survey, sorry, Ajman,
Yeah,
the
that's
survey.
amazing.
The survey is out, and if you become a member, please fill it in. Give us your data, give us your opinion, so we can collect that data and make and write that up for global student affairs.
Yeah, and you know, right on the membership, what are the classes of members? What kind of members do you look out for? As an individual, can I be a member? As an institution, can I be a member of an association? And what kind of category of membership do you have available?
We have those three exactly. You've got individual, you've got institutional, you've got association, and we have a corporate membership. So corporate membership is for companies that may want to support what we do. And it's a branding, it's a corporate membership. But the majority of people is institutional and association membership. When your association becomes a member, all your association members benefit from that. So we want to encourage association and institutional memberships.
And this year, all roads leads to Korea for the Global Summit. Tell us what's the expectation like, or what would be like right in Korea?
Oh, that's wonderful. All roads lead to Korea. I love that. So I'm quite right. So this year in May, we are in Daegu. Daegu is just south of Seoul in Korea. And we are privileged that COSAF, which is the Student Financial Aid Organization in Korea, is partnering with us and is hosting us. They're very generous. The Korean government has been very generous to support the summit with various tours. We're doing institutional tours before the summit. We're going to view a number of institutions, private and public institutions in Korea. And they will also take us to the UNESCO heritage sites, to the temples and so forth. So we're in for a very, very good, it's going to be a fantastic summit. The two keynote speakers, we were lucky to have secured Professor Schreiber, who is the vice president or the president at the university in Tunisia. And she is the vice president of the International Association of Universities. We were privileged to have her with us. And our second keynote speaker is Professor Phillips from the University of Graz in Austria. And she is a specialist on sustainable development, education for sustainable development. And again, will give us amazing insights on that. To also add that we have papers from over 40 countries, so there'll be really a very diverse group of papers and a very diverse bunch of voices coming together. We're having Chinese and Australian and New Zealand and from Colombia and from Trinidad and from Ghana as well, from Senegal and all the way up and down Africa and Europe and so forth. So it's a very diverse summit, and we welcome all of the listeners here. We welcome everybody to come and join us there, and yeah, it'll be an amazing event, our 7th event. So that's great. We've got a book. Sorry, just to add, we've just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So it's a 10th birthday for our AASAS. We had a 10-year birthday celebration in Rome last year, and we produced a book. It's a coffee table, beautiful, colorful book on just how far our AASAS has come since its inception in Belgium. It's chartered in Belgium as an NGO, so we've looked over the last 10 years and how far we've come.
And just a great interest in your milestone, 10 years, a decade in empowering student voices through student affairs, and also giving institutions that leverage to understand that there is a need to promote students' development. If there was anything you were to look at in 10 years, what are you proud of? What are you proud of in 10 years? Tell the world about this.
Oh, that's a good question. So that's kind of a blue sky exercise. What do I wish for in 10 years? And what do I want us to have achieved? I would like it that people or that the institutions are much bolder about creating a context in which our students function. So just to give you an example, the SDG 4 promotes higher education and saying, or education and higher education, saying we need more funding for students to be successful. But we need much more than that. We don't just need bursaries and stipends for individual students. We need institutions to function in functional contexts. So we need environments that are safe, that have transport, where electricity works, water runs, that is drinkable, where our women, where gender-based violence is a thing of the past, where our students can walk around and think freely and innovate and dream up things that they need to do in their lives. And to do that, we need contexts that are conducive to learning, not just individual bursaries or individual promotion of individual programs. Those are good. Those are good to have, but they're not sufficient. So I hope in 10 years, we look at our higher education institutions and we look at them as functional contexts, where the context, the environment is conducive for learning, not just individual students are supported. So I hope 10 years, we will have achieved more of that. Yeah.
And within this space, there's continuous development, and everybody wants to strive to be the best. Would ever be a moment where the IASAS is looking forward to award, like how the Times Higher Education Rankings is ranking institutions based on very important metrics in research and lifestyle on campus? Is there a moment where IASAS, I'm going to do an international awards awarding universities or student affairs who have been very innovative in creating enabling environment for universities as your goals are?
I love that. It's a great idea. I hadn't thought of it. Two things I want to say. So in Korea, for the conference papers, we do give out awards for the best conference paper, the best junior paper, the best research paper, and so forth. So we do awards at the global summits. But I hadn't thought of that lovely idea to say we want to give awards to the associations, the best associations that are most advancing the idea of social justice, most in the environments. So that is a wonderful idea. And Ajumang, maybe will come you to hand over that award when the time comes.
I'll be glad to do that.
Yes, and I love that idea because our real thrust is about making sure that our students are agents of social justice in the world, that we with them around programs that promote social justice, that they become agents of social justice, and that our institutions become avenues of a socially just world. And it would be lovely to have awards for the best association or the association that most boldly promotes justice in the environment. I love that. Thank you for that idea.
Thank you. And nice people, have been in a great conversation thus far with Professor Dr. Birgit Schreiber. She is the Vice President for the International Association of Student Affairs and Services, and it's been amazing thus far. We are actually wrapping up because, good conversations never end. It keeps on and on and on, but we have to just work with our time at this moment. Birgit, if you wanted to share a closing remark on what the future is like for IASAS globally in terms of standards for students growth and development, what would you want to pass around?
I think for us, the vision is to ensure that student affairs is capacitated to make the most bold influence and impact it can in the institution. To do that, we have events and programs, and we hope that many of our members and many of the listeners here join our programs to embolden themselves, to advance themselves, to capacitate themselves to become the best possible student affairs practitioner they can in the institution.
And that's awesome. So that's where time affords us on this interview. I believe you had a great time of learning, right, from the Vice President, Professor Dr. Birgit Schreiber, great submissions. And now you want to be part of IASAS. So do well, visit the website, search them on Google, and then be an individual, an association, or institution, and learn more, enhance growth, and also capacitate the Student Affairs Directorate on your campuses. And that's where hope comes from. It's been a great time having you on AAU Talks, the voice of higher education in Africa. See you next time. Have a nice day and bye.